my name is Rachel and today we're talking about weird books. Well, today we're talking about VITA Nostra, which is a weird book, but the theme of this video is weird books. What is weird? How do we define that? How do we read it? How do we review it? For today's video, we're talking about VITA Nostra, as I said. However, we are also talking about two other books that I recently read. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield and The Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda. I just read a Riku Onda book recently. I have a review for it, a different one. That was a thriller also, but this is a weird thriller, weirder than that one. All three of these books were chosen for me to read by my Therapy Bills patrons, Peggy, Jill, and Shoko. Thank you all for these very specific requests. So let me tell you what a weird book is to me, and this is such a great subject because it is entirely subjective. There was actually an excellent panel on weird books at BookNet Fest this year with so many good recommendations. One of the things people ask when I say, this book is so weird, I'm reading this book and I say, oh man, this is so weird. They ask, okay, is it good weird or bad weird? And I love that it could be both, or it could be one or the other. So let's discuss what a weird book is. Weird fiction is, it's not really, I mean, I guess you could call it a genre. It's not like you're going to find a weird bookshelf at your bookstore, but I think that there's an intention behind it where the author chooses to write something weird. And it is weird because it's supposed to evoke this sense of unknown, and it often blends together things like horror, sometimes fantasy, and often the supernatural in order to create this like deeply unsettling, often thought-provoking experience. Often thought-provoking, not always, sometimes. They can be challenging to read, and because I think they force readers into this position where often weird books sort of test the limits of human understanding of things. I think that that's definitely the case with VITA Nostra and Our Wives Under the Sea. Weird books often leave you with a sense of dread, and that can also be either good or bad. It can also give you a sense of wonder, but it's sort of like a dark sense of wonder, sort of like looking at something and being awe-inspired, but in a like, I'm dreading this kind of way. They're often richly atmospheric. They deal with like existential exploration, and they're often ambiguous in their endings, which is definitely the case for all three of these books. They often defy conventional storytelling and narrative expectations. So it's not just the story itself, it's the way that it's told is often different from typical stories. These aren't books that are just gross, odd, bizarre. Like, it's not just like extreme horror where it's like disgusting, but sometimes thought-provoking. I think if I'm going to call a book weird, it has to be a little bit more than that, because we are doing unsettling atmosphere. The blending of genres is key here in order to create that unsettling atmosphere where we're blending a lot of like horror elements and supernatural. And that ambiguity is really key in order to sort of provoke a, I don't know how to describe this other than going, huh? Mixed with a, oh no. We're also, again, really diving into like existential themes, which is certainly the case for VITA Nostra and Our Wives Under the Sea. We're asking like questions about like metaphysical stuff, identity, reality. Certainly we're asking questions about reality in VITA Nostra. We're challenging our understanding of the world as a reader when we delve into weird books. VITA Nostra in particular could be called like cosmic horror, where it focuses on like the insignificance of humanity and how when you zoom out, we are like nothing in the scope of that. And that really instills like a sense of dread in you, emphasizing like the powerful forces beyond our control and beyond our comprehension as mere humans. I would classify things that do that as weird books. And again, VITA Nostra certainly like falls into that category. Some of the weirdest books that I've ever read are Piranesi by Susanna Clark, All's Well by Mona Awad, works by Chuck Tingle I would classify as weird fiction. And it is extreme horror, but I would still say that it delves into like the metaphysical in a way that I would classify it as weird horror. And the example I'm going to give is, again, To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger. So let's talk about the three books in particular that I read that I want to talk about in the scope of this video. So that's, again, VITA Nostra, Our Wives Under the Sea, and The Aosawa Murders. So I will be honest, I struggled in a way with two of these. Our Wives Under the Sea, I did not struggle with, other than to say that it's probably a little beyond my comprehension. However, the writing is so beautiful, it stuck with me. VITA Nostra was one of the weirdest reading experiences of my life. I don't know if I enjoyed that book or not, or if I can just say, this is a book I read and I understand what it's trying to do. Weird fiction is very hard to review because I often don't find myself loving it. The exception being Piranesi. 5 stars. Weird book, 5 stars. Vita Nostra, probably a part of this is that it's so over my head in a way that Piranesi was not. I understood Piranesi. By the end, I felt really satisfied by the ending, and the ambiguity sort of came along with the journey, but by the end, like, I understood what we were doing in a way that I didn't fully understand in Vita Nostra, or maybe I did sort of understand it, and I just don't think that what we're saying is cool, and it was just weird for the sake of making a very long book that I felt could have been a short story. However, again, I do understand the smartness of it and the concept of it, with language being this like all-powerful force, which it probably is not even the right way to describe it. See, it's so over my head. Let's just talk about what Vita Nostra is about. Vita Nostra is a dark academia book, and it follows Sasha Samokina. We meet her at first when she is a teenager, and she is on vacation with her mom. This weird dude wearing these sunglasses keeps coming up to her and scaring the shit out of her. She's not sure what he wants from her, but then all of a sudden he starts asking her to complete these weird tasks, like go swimming naked at 4 o'clock in the morning. Every single morning. After she does these tasks, afterwards she throws up gold coins. It's weird right off the bat. She has no idea why she's being asked to do these stuff, what the gold coins are for. And I'll be honest, having finished the book, I still don't understand the gold coin. When she gets home from vacation, same guy shows up again. He's like, every morning I want you to run, and you're gonna run and then go pee in the bushes. And after she does this, she throws up. And the thing about him is that he's instilling fear in her and saying, if you don't do this, terrible things will happen. And sometimes they do when she fails to do it and doesn't do what he has, tasked her with doing. These very weird tasks that don't make any sense to her. They don't make any sense to the reader. She collects all these gold coins after she, does what she is told to do by this guy. She throws up an amount of gold coins every single time she does one of these tasks. And she's been collecting these. Well, then he tells her, after she fails her entrance exams into a university, he tells her, yes, you've been accepted into the Institute of Special Technologies. And she's like, what the fuck is that? And it's out in the middle of nowhere. So she barely convinces her mother to let her go. She's, finally college age. Her mom is getting married to this guy named Valentine and is starting her own new chapter of her life. So her mom is a little bit not really paying attention to Sasha and not understanding that Sasha is going through all this weird shit. So Sasha goes off to the Institute of Special Technologies, hands over all these coins, meets this guy, finds out that he's actually the son of the guy who's been showing up and making her do these tasks, but they don't have a relationship. Like, this kid hates his dad, and everybody sort of fears this guy. Turns out that this guy is her mentor. Every student has a mentor. So they start classes, and these classes have them memorizing these blocks of text that don't make any sense and are almost impossible to memorize because they just don't, again, they don't make any sense. And it's weird. And you go through all of these years of Sasha doing this, and the more she starts to memorize these texts, the more she starts to go through physical and psychological changes, including but not limited to growing claws and wings. So she goes through this series of intense and bizarre transformations. She can't tell her mom. She's not allowed to tell anybody outside of the institute. And you're really pushing the boundaries of Sasha was just a normal 16-year-old teenage girl, and all of a sudden she has become so much more. And what ends up happening is you find out that every single person in existence is a part of language. So some people are a comma and some people are a period. Sasha is a verb, or is she? Because at the end, she's something else. The point of this is about, the theme of it is about transformation. By the end of the book, Sasha has gone fully through her transformation, and all of the students are transforming into something beyond human, transcending ordinary existence. And there's this metaphysical component where you're understanding that everybody is sort of that cosmic horror thing where you're zooming out and realizing that everybody is a part of this huge fabric, and you're sort of meaningless in the grand context of things, but Sasha's not meaningless. She's become part of this universal language and is a fundamental element of reality itself. The ending was so her mom had a baby, the baby was sick, and then Sasha goes through the transformation, fails, but then doesn't fail. I'm not really sure. It was very confusing. Again, this is sort of open-ended and very ambiguous. It leaves a lot of questions that you don't get answers to, and it's very long. So the list of questions just adds up and you get answers for maybe 2% of them. So I guess that Sasha's entire journey is a metaphor for intellectual growth. Dark academia is typically that. You go into college, you change a lot, but in this case, you're pushing the limits of what it means to be human and, you know, your intellectual growth. It also had a good conversation about like destiny and free will and getting people to do things. So her advisor says that the only way that he could have incentivized the students to do this and become this and do this transformation was through fear. And she said, no, I don't think so. I think that love makes me who I am, and incentivizing through fear, something is lost there. And again, I think these were great conversations. Like towards the end, we did some more good conversations. It's just there's so much bulk in there that didn't need to be there. This could have been a short story and done all of that effectively. This is classified as weird fiction though, so if you are into weird books, this will be right up your alley. It has the unsettling atmosphere where it feels very disorienting is a good way to describe it. She undergoes, the main character Sasha undergoes these like really uncomfortable to witness transformations that can often be like frightening, and they're very bizarre. The wings, the claws. She sometimes loses the ability to speak or see, and you're always worried about what's going to happen to her next. Like you're constantly in a state of dread and unease reading this, which adds to the atmosphere, which, you know, classifies it as a weird book. This is, you know, doing the blending of genres, so we do have some fantasy elements here. It is doing psychological horror for sure. That cosmic horror element, that zoom out element. I would say that this is almost impossible to categorize within a specific genre, which is why I think that weird books just sort of nails what this is. It has that ambiguous element again because it's just a bunch of unanswered questions. I still don't understand what it is that the Institute of Special Technologies is ultimately doing. It has a lot of like existential themes. Again, Sasha's journey is about her intellectual transformation, but also we're doing a lot of, you know, work talking about like the nature of reality. Ultimately, I think that if you're willing to read a very long book talking about these things that doesn't really answer your questions about the world itself, but sort of sparks a conversation in you about transformation, if you like the setting of dark academia, which is also often like a weird book's, you know, subsect. And if you don't mind listening to a teenage girl have a lot of questions and then not get answers to those questions, and then eventually she sort of shifts and starts down this transformation of becoming something else, you should read it. I don't know that I would call it a satisfying book. People typically either love or hate this. I fascinatingly find myself very middle of the road about it. I gave it a 2.5. I understand that it's a smart book. It might just be over my head, but I really do feel that this was very long-winded. I also like Sasha gets into relationships and I could not wait for those parts to be over. I was like, I don't care about these people. I don't even care about Sasha. And I think that's part of like why the rating is so low, is I really want to care what happens to these people, but like Sasha could die and I would feel nothing. Anybody in this book could die and I would feel nothing, because it's more intent on having those, well, it seems that it was more intent on having those conversations than it was about building characters that I actually gave a shit about. But then it kept showcasing these relationships between like Sasha and her mom, and then Sasha and these boys that she dates in the school. And I'm like, these people are almost indistinguishable to me. So again, if you're just there for the conversations and you don't mind that it's kind of long-winded, I think you might enjoy this. But if you're looking to like really get invested in people experiencing these bonkers metaphysical things and having these conversations about the nature of reality, then it might be up your alley. But for me, 2.5. The next book I rated higher. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield was a wild account of also a transformation. Transformation is like a common theme in weird fiction, except in this one, it's about this lesbian couple, sapphic couple. I can't remember if they were lesbians or bisexual. It's about two women who are married to each other, Leah and Mary, and Leah is a scientist, like a marine biologist, and this company hires her to go under the sea in a, vessel, an underwater vessel, and they get stuck for a long time. And when she comes back, her wife notices that she has changed, and slowly she is changing more and more, as in like physically. And so there's a lot of questions about like what happened that don't really get answered. It's more about like seeing Leah go through this transformation where she was this one person, and now because of this event she has shifted, and how this shifts their relationship. And you see a lot about their relationship before and after, And it's sort of like paralleling itself, how like people change, relationships change, how big events change us, but then also adding in this like horror and supernatural element. So it's doing the blending of genres thing that weird fiction often does. It's blending horror, science fiction, and I would classify this in part as literary fiction. I really don't know how to categorize this. I mean, it could end up on so many lists. It could end up again on like science fiction, horror lists. It's so many things, but it worked. The supernatural aspects of Leah's deep sea mission and the speculative nature of the deep sea mission, like what happened during that, the supernatural elements that you don't really get explained to you, contribute to this blending of genres. This book also, a lot like Vita Nostra, delves into like existential themes, metaphysical themes, talking about identity and reality and the nature of the unknown. Leah's transformation and the stuff that happens during her deep sea mission that goes awry suggest at a world that operates beyond the boundaries of like normal human comprehension of how the world works. Already, like the ocean is great for like horror because so much of it is unsettling and unknown to us. It feels dangerous. It feels alien. I think that's why Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant works so well. It's not just the scary mermaid part. It's also the ocean itself gets described to you as this eerie, unsettling, unknown place. The ocean becomes a character itself because it's so unfathomable and uncanny. This adds to the psychological horror element where it is subtle here, but it is it's both subtle but like has like an overwhelming effect on you. Like it's not trying overtly to hit you over the head with it, and yet you feel overwhelmed by it. The fear of the ocean that Leah experienced, and then her coming back, and Mira's fear of what's happening to Leah, all of this combined just creates a creeping sense of dread. And then Leah's transformation itself, where she's going through both physical and psychological changes as a result of what happened to her under the sea, is this like metamorphosis that defies scientific explanation. She starts to like need a lot of salt, and she just basically lives in the bathtub, and she's starting to like wither away. So all of this, again, I think disorienting is a really good way to describe books like Vita Nostra and Our Wives Under the Sea. But I think that the ambiguity and the lack of answers works in Our Wives Under the Sea in a way that does not work for me in Vita Nostra, because I cared more about Leah and Miri than I did about Sasha. And I think that that is in part because we got to really delve into that transformative process of who they were before she went under the sea and who they are after as a result. And we do this in a way that weird fiction often does, which is a non-linear narrative structure. So the novel's alternating perspectives already between Miri and Leah. Wow, what a mouth. It's also like very fragmented. It's non-linear. We're not telling it in like a straight line. We're like kind of bouncing all over the place. And that's very hard to do, but Julia Armfield is really good at storytelling in a nonlinear fashion, and her choice to do this then added to the disorienting nature, but in a way that was very satisfying. How can you be disoriented and satisfied? Only in a weird book. It's a very unsettling reading experience, but I think if you were to ask me, okay, weird in a good way or weird in a bad way, this is weird in a great way. It also helps that, again, Julia Armfield just really knows how to write. She really knows how to enhance every single sentence. Reading this next to reading Powerless was jarring because you can tell that Julia Armfield understands exactly what she's trying to get out of you with each and every sentence, and each and every paragraph is sort of like masterfully put together. Whereas in Powerless, the opposite is true. The descriptions, the poetic language here in Our Wives Under the Sea is just so good. And it also helps that thematically she's doing more than just weirdness. I think the reason I got emotionally invested in this more so than Vita Nostra was because it's sort of a study of the intricacies of romantic relationships, particularly between women. There was this line that said, "Every couple, I think, enjoys its own mythology, recollections like note cards to guide you around an exhibition." The novel delves deeply into the dynamic between Miri and Leah and talks about their history and how they came to be both separately, who they are separately, how they came to be together, and how all of that affects their present. Like, you have a very good understanding of these people. And this is a shorter book than Vita Nostra, by the way, much shorter. And yet I deeply understand both Miri and Leah, especially how Miri's relationship with her mother affected her, and then affected her going into her relationship with Leah. I thought that was beautifully done. It's a really nuanced exploration of love and commitment and the impact of trauma on a strong relationship, a relationship that is founded on so much love. I mean, it was just written, they have so much profound emotional depth separately and together. Mary's unwavering love and commitment to Leah, even after, she starts going through this transformative process where her body is changing. She's not who she was before she went under the sea. I mean, I think that a lot of people would just dip with this was happening to their partner, not Mary. And that's because of who Mary is, and we very clearly know who she is. She is steadfast. And this bond that they have, even if Leah can't keep it up, Mary would. Why am I crying? Are you kidding? Like, the resilience there was just really beautiful. I mean, she was there until the very end. It just, I don't think I've read a book that really delved into the complexities and challenges of maintaining a relationship when you are facing something like this kind of adversity. Mary's internal struggles, but also her determination to keep caring for Leah despite the fear and the apprehension and the unknown nature of what happened to her wife. Just, love. No more feelings. Again, it really went into like how trauma impacts relationships. You don't really think about that before you get into a relationship with somebody. Like, what if something absolutely emotionally devastating, completely traumatizing happens to you while we are together? How is that going to color the rest of our time together? Will we stay together? And Leah's traumatic experience underwater and the transformation after, they deeply affect her and her wife, and that is really, really painful to watch. And I really don't think I can name you another book that has done this, where we see this beautiful relationship and how it began and who these people are, and then this like stopping point where it's like, this horribly traumatizing thing has happened. How do we go on from this? Can we go on from this? Will my partner adapt to these changes? Will I adapt to these changes? It also did a really good job of, without overtly saying it, talking about isolation that comes with grief. So Leah's isolation literally came under the sea, even though she had 2 coworkers with her. Whereas her wife's isolation came after Leah came back. When she was alone, she thought she felt isolated, but when it was when Leah came back that she truly experienced the isolation of, my wife is going through this. I have nobody, I cannot tell anybody about this. And the only time she felt less isolated was when the sister of one of Leah's coworkers who went under the sea with her reaches out, and she feels like this sense of camaraderie. And it also does a great job of explaining how we can grieve somebody while they are still alive and while we still are in love with them. This is just a poignant, beautiful, very impactful book. There was also something this is so random, but there was something I really liked about this. When Leah was under the sea, Mary needed, again, she was feeling really isolated. And so she was trying to find a support group, but there is no support group for our wives under the sea. But she did find a support group, except it was fake. I just found this so interesting. And like, I want to reach out to Julia Armfield and be like, how did you come up with this? Because I could see people doing this. In fact, I should probably look it up and see if it's true. So the support group was a bunch of women on the internet created a forum where they pretended that their husbands were out in space. And so Mary is reading all of these, like trying to get, some sort of like solace and feel like some, like me too, like I'm going through this too. And so she's reading through all of these, and at one point she says, basically that one of these women was taking it way too seriously, and one of them said, hey, you're not really keeping up with your own lore, like you're making up this story, and you said that your husband hadn't contacted you at all, but now you're saying he contacted you once, so like you need to keep up with your own story. And the woman in question was basically like, how dare you? I am all alone and my husband is out in space. And imagine being Mary and watching this unfold and just being like, my wife is literally under the sea and you guys are just here pretending. I just thought that was so fascinating and kind of brilliant. I don't know why that was like one of my biggest takeaways from the book was that little piece. But I loved it. I also think that if you like weird books that are similar to, I didn't read the book, but Annihilation, this book, if you liked Annihilation, the movie, I think you might like this. If we're assuming that Annihilation, the movie, and Annihilation, the book are similar, because in Annihilation, we're like going into this area, this like really mysterious and surreal place that defies scientific understanding. And they encounter these people that go into this, and one of the women, her husband, came back, and he came back different, at least again in the movie. And so they go into this area to try to figure out what happened to her husband, and she and the group are experiencing these like terrifying, strange phenomena that are making them question like their sense of reality. And then when, you know, she comes back, it's sort of a similar thing between like Mary and Leah, where it's like, how do we go on from this? Although it's a little more complicated than that. Does a lot of the same like psychological horror and unease that Our Wives Under the Sea does. Talks about transformations and identity. So I think if you enjoyed the movie Annihilation, you will like Our Wives Under the Sea. Though it's a little softer in like its scientific elements, like it's less sci-fi stuff, because you don't really experience like the creepy animals that you experienced in the movie Annihilation. That's not really in Our Wives Under the Sea. But I gave Our Wives Under the Sea a 4. I really enjoyed it. This was, out of the 3 of these books, that one was my favorite. I honestly highly recommend it. And the third weird book I'm going to talk about, I gave a 2 because I did not like it. And it is Riku Onda's other book, The Aosawa Murders. I like Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight. I gave that one a 3. But The Aosawa Murders, oh my gosh, this took me forever. We were supposed to buddy read this, me and my patrons, and a lot of people DNF'd because it's very difficult to get through. So it's a little overly intricately structured, I'd say. It is a mystery novel, sort of, that is recounting events after a mass poisoning happens. And it's trying to get you as the reader to piece together what happens from this like mass amount of perspectives on what happened. And it is weird fiction in that it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. It's very ambiguous. It is very atmospheric. It has a very intricate narrative structure. And this is a book that is diving into the idea of like, what is perception? What is truth? Versus what is truth. It's not a typical narrative structure. I would classify this as a weird book. So the crime itself is what the novel is centered on, trying to figure out what happened around this crime that happened, where there was this mass poisoning that happened at the home of the Aosawa family. All of them, minus the daughter, Hisako, and a bunch of their guests during a celebration at their home in this like seaside city in Japan, all drank a drink that had poison in it. So 17 people died as a result of this. The only people that survived are Hisako Aosawa, the daughter, who is blind, and the housekeeper, who eventually dies. There was a note that was found, which is at the beginning of the book. It's like this very cryptic note that I still don't really fully understand. And it was found next to the body of a man who delivered the drinks to the home, the poison lace drink. But the case is sort of unsolved because his death was a suicide. Nobody knows why he would do this. Hisako, the daughter, is kind of an odd, weird character. People don't feel like she grieved enough, and she's sort of like this enigmatic presence throughout the book, but there's no evidence linking her to the crime. But one of the police officers who was investigating the crime did feel that she was involved. Like for some reason, he just felt like immediately upon meeting her, she's guilty, even though she was, you know, a child. So the story is told through a series of memoirs, interviews, and like fragments of accounts from various people who were either there or affected by what happened. This is much like Our Wives Under the Sea, a non-linear narrative structure, and this sort of encouraged you to sort of piece together what happened, which I think that because of the non-linear narrative structure, this sort of falls into like weird fiction. So you get accounts from various witnesses, neighbors, friends of the Aosawa family, acquaintances of the Aosawa family, the daughter of the housekeeper who passed, who was the only person to survive other than Hisako, the daughter. And the issue with this book is that it's too many people who all do the same thing, which is like they're being interviewed and they're like, oh yes, the weather that we're having. The amount of weather talk in this book was just so much. I was losing it. I was starting to skim over the lines about the weather. As soon as I saw any sort of like the heat, the humidity be brought up, I'm like, I'm skimming. I can't do this. I can't do this with every single person. And I started to forget who was even talking, honestly. All I could hear was the weather, the humidity. I get it. I live in Florida. I'm sweating my ass off too. The only interesting perspective I felt, and I feel like this should have been the only perspective in the book, was Makiko Saiga, and she authored a book about the Aosawa murders. And she was actually a friend, sort of Hisako, and her brother is the one that found everybody dead. So then she, years later, goes back to interview people, and her interviews provide insights to the case. And then her book is sort of talked about in different interviews throughout this book, The Aosawa Murders. I really feel like it should have just been perspectives from Hisako and Makiko. Makiko was obviously very deeply affected by Hisako. Like, she was, again, this very enigmatic character, and she was very drawn to her, and she wanted to understand, because she thinks that Hisako did it, and she wanted to understand the ins and outs. And also, like, Makiko is not like I wouldn't call her a good person. Like, she was doing some weird shit too, and I think it just would have been much more interesting if we were just sort of playing off the two of them. But Hisako's character, I don't know, I felt sort of uncomfortable with it, because like from the jump it's clear that like Hisako is the person that you're supposed to think did this, and she is the blind daughter of the Aosawa family. It does that thing where it's like all of her other senses were heightened after the loss of her eyesight, sort of making her into like this like superhuman character, even though it's not like supernatural at all. And what ends up happening is that at the end you learn that the guy who brought the drinks, and again, I'm not really understanding what happened, because the way that the ending was written was so weird and ambiguous that I didn't fully understand it. There was something about Hisako's mom, something about a religious belief, Christianity, something, I don't know. And then her mom used to go visit children at like a children's home, and Hisako would sit outside. And the guy who poisoned all those people, she would sit on a bench with him. They couldn't see each other. It was like a bench with a back. So like she was sitting over here in one corner and him in the other, and they would talk to each other, and they struck up like some sort of friendship. And she said something to him alluding to killing her family, maybe, and then he did it, I think. This was just like a quick little snippet at the end. After Hisako has regained her eyesight, by the way. I just don't really like that we made it the blind character. I just felt like kind of uncomfortable with that. I don't understand how the cop was like, I know she did it, I know she did. I think that this was trying to do like good work in themes, like the subjectivity of truth, how, you know, your perception becomes your reality, when in fact, you know, truth is truth no matter what your perception is. Each character's account, each, you know, interviewee's account differs in what happened, and the true nature of the crime sort of remains ambiguous at the end. The truth is multifaceted. I get it. That makes sense. We were doing some thematic work here where it's talking about how like Hisako's reality differs from everybody else, and she mentions that after she's regained her eyesight that she liked the world better when she was blind, which I'm not sure about the blindness rep here, but the character's understanding of Hisako versus Hisako's understanding of Hisako vary greatly. Again, that goes back to like the perception versus truth theme. And we did a little bit about diving into like talking about grief and trauma, which is, weird books are a great place to talk about grief and trauma. I mean, look at Our Wives Under the Sea. This talks a lot about like the emotional aftermath of this crime, this series of murders, exploring how these different characters coped with the grief and the trauma of what they saw, what they experienced. And then Hisako's lack of grief sort of contrasts with that, which just made her more of an enigma. I think that Riku Onda does a good job of atmospheric writing, like does a great job of you know, writing with a sense of foreboding, but this was really drowned out by all the weather talk, too many perspectives, and too much ambiguity. We did great in writing like unease and tension, only for it to just not be satisfying in the end. The fragmented narrative structure, the shifting perspectives, I think that it is a good idea in theory. It's just that when we don't make it satisfying at the end, I have to wonder what the point was. So while those do classify it as weird fiction, I wouldn't say this is weird good. I would say it's weird. It does possess certain qualities though that give it like that unique and unsettling, haunting atmosphere, which will appeal to fans of weird fiction. If you're not looking for like the typical mystery thriller, you might want to try this, because it's got that mystery and psychological depth. It's really focusing on the investigation, which is like delving into more of like the human psyche portion of the investigation rather than what actually happened. So if you're looking for something different, this does have like elements of weird fiction. The unsettling atmosphere is there, although you're going to be dealing with a lot of talk about the weather. You've got a fragmented narrative structure, so it's up to you to sort of piece together what happened. Good luck, because again, we're doing a lot of perception versus like truth. Perception becomes the reality, so you don't really know what's true and what's not. So if you are looking for a book that is weird in that it challenges like conventional storytelling and delves into the complexity of human psychology, this might be the one for you. I am very confused. I guess what happened at the end is that Hisako hinted that she wanted her family dead and that guy did it for her. And then something happened with her mom. I don't know. Like it was too weird. You know what I mean? It was too much weird in an unsatisfying way. And unfortunately, the patrons who also read it with me, who were like stuck it out to the end, which that was rough, also did not enjoy. So that was kind of a bummer. I feel bad. I was like, let's read this together. And then everybody was like, however, I do think that Riku Onda can write, and whoever's doing her translation, I think, is doing a good job. So I'm excited to read more from Riku Onda. This one just was not a hit for me. And Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight was like that really, my jaw was on the floor several times, and I wanted to feel that again, and unfortunately this just didn't do that for me. I did ask on Threads, what are some of you guys' weirdest books that you've ever read? Like, it could be good weird or good or bad weird, you know, just tell me whatever your weirdest book is. And I got a lot of great answers. There's a lot of variety in there. If you want to check out that thread, I'll link it down below. And also let me know in the comments, what is the weirdest, either weird good or weird bad, weirdest book that you have ever read? Again, if you're looking for a weird book, I would, you know, check out Our Wives Under the Sea, certainly, out of these. But I would love to get more of you to read Pier and Essie. It's so good. And I think they're making it into a movie, which is great. I'm so excited about that. I really want to get Carlos to read it, though the weird books are sort of outside of his, like way outside of his typical genre. Let me know if you have read Vita Nostra and what your thoughts are on it. I know people have a lot of thoughts, but it's a very hard book to talk about and review. So please let me know if you have read it. Let me know your weirdest books. Thank you so much for, oh wait, Jill asked me to read Our Wives Under the Sea. Thank you for that, by the way. I got mail from Jill. So Jill was kind enough to offer to buy me the Illumicrate editions of my favorite series. And that is Furyborn by Claire Legrand. So these just got here. I don't know if you heard the doorbell earlier, but that was these getting here. And I had a feeling it was them, so I opened this box and screamed in my kitchen. I scared the cats. I'm sorry, Artemis. So this is my favorite YA fantasy series, Furyborn by Claire Legrand. It's the entire trilogy. I'm so happy. But look at this. Hold on. Oh, look at her. Hold on. Oh my god! I'm so happy. I'm thrilled. I'm so happy. Oh my gosh. This means I now own 3 copies of Kingsbane, so it's time to get those into the hands of actual, you know, YA readers. But these are mine. These are my favorite. If you like weird girls, Riel might be the one for you, although she's a bad person. I'm so serious. But I care for her, okay? She's a bad person who I care a lot about. She makes a lot of mistakes, okay? So just, I'm so happy. Anyway, okay, this is very succinct. Super on par for me. I'm so pleased. This is my favorite series. I'm so happy. They're finally in my hands. Illumicrate just like went out of their way to do good shit. I mean, my God, look at this. Oh my god! Oh my god! Look at the... Ah! Shut the fuck up! Shut up! Shut up. Who else is in here? Oh no! Oh my god! Oh my god! Who else? Who else is in here? I'm afraid. I'm fine, actually. I'm totally fine. Thank you, Jill. I'm not gonna cry on camera. I'm gonna have a normal day today. So I just wanted to say thank you to Jill. Thank you for commissioning, or for, you know, Therapy Bills commissioning Our Wives Under the Sea. Thank you so much for my favorite series. I'm so happy. I have to get them into the hands of like other, you know, readers now, the older ones that I have. This is my older copy of Lightbringer. Oh, she's so pretty. I mean, like, this series just doesn't have a bad cover. All of them are good. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Weird books go down below. Also, please read Furyborn, I'm begging you. Okay? Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye! And before I go, I should say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons. And those are Alexander, Ashley H, Astra, Astrid P, Brittany Bobitney, Call Me Kodiak, Cami, Choco's Trash for Japanese Mysteries and Thrillers, Chris the Horror Therapist, DJ Rocktopus, EK Casey, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Aaron with 2 E's, Eric, D, GalaxyBot, Jess, John E, Julie D, K, Kaleno K, Casey McKenzie, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Lily B, Max B, Min B, Mommy Zami, Alice, Panoramic Demon, Peggy Lou, I'm a Creepoo, Rain, Reese, SJ, Sadwich Bree, Samar, Scarlet, Shiny, SMK, Steph B, T Delegati, 2 Orbit, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, Zorvictia, and Chai Guy. Thank you all so much for being here and being a friend. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patron. And those are Alejandra, Alicia Needs Caffeine, Althea, Amanda D, Andy, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Ballads and Bookends, Beck, Blake Lemon Pants, Bly Lavender, Bookish Brainrot, Bookish by Jenna, Bree, Kate B, Caitlin, Cardinal Ginger, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Catherine, Kathy, CJ, Claire Online, Clover's Mom, Colleen, Corwin, Cosmic, Darius, Danielle M, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast, Dorothea, Drive-By Thinker, E.T. Cosgrove, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Emma K, Aaron H, Ezra Moon, Fiona, Francis, Gadarn, Hannah C, Harpy Kuro, Ilianaka, J.M. Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, that's such a good one, Kat H, Catherine M, Katie L, Kaylee C, Kayala, Kendra, Kitten, KMTV, Laughing Cat Dog, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Library of Scars, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Luciri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Marcella, Marquita, Megan, Malara, May, Molly, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Nimeska, Nyan Binary, Owl, Paige P, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Queen Cereal, that's a good one too, Rachel B, Reader Rising, Reba, Rebecca, Rebecca R, Ronnie, Rosie, Rowan, Secoria, Saintbringer, Sakia Lume, Samantha O, Sammy C, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Sarah Z, Shamed, Shannon, Sean, Sisette, Talia, Tiana, Trashcan Teddy, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being a friend.